This is not actually about gender or sexuality. This is about fashion. Hello, and welcome to Somewhere on the Spectrum. This is our last episode in the garden. It is too hot. I am getting sunburned. Today, as I sort of hinted at last week, we're going to be talking about clothes. This is not a topic that I was intending on talking about. It's not something I think about very much, really. So where did this come from? As some of you will know, if you've been paying attention to my videos at all, I have created a course for gender and sexuality. That's not what we're talking about today. Don't panic, don't run away. That is available on my Patreon if you're interested. It's basically just a starting point for anybody that's interested in digging into that part of who they are. In the process of researching that and kind of going through this whole thing myself, trying to understand who I am and how these things impact me and all that kind of stuff. As part of that process, I started doing research into different groups of people and also into the queer community. I downloaded TikTok. I avoided it for so many years and then I downloaded it. Dangerous decision was that. Indeed. So now I have TikTok, which is time consuming. I'm sure you guys already know, right? So I was looking at lesbians on TikTok. I was looking at a lot of different things, but this is one of the areas that I was looking at. And one of the things that I noticed was that this group particularly talked a lot about not centering the male gaze, which realistically our patriarchal Western civilization based on capitalism absolutely does center the male gaze and everything. And I don't think most of us realize how much this affects our lives, how internalized this is, and how damaging it can be, and also totally how unnecessary this is. So that was the first thing that I was thinking about. Okay, what does this mean? How does this play out? The next thing was stop thinking about what you should wear and start thinking about what you want to wear. Now, this is another thing because I dress for comfort. And so I was thinking I already did that. I already dress for comfort. I don't dress for anybody else. I dress for my own comfort. I'm fine. But then when I started to look at some of these videos, I realized there was a thing there. Part of it is related to literal thinking. Part of it is related to societal expectations. And I realized that, yes, I do dress for comfort, but I dress for comfort within a paradigm of ladies' clothing. And it turns out you don't have to do that. I didn't know. So, being neurodiverse, we got a little bit of literal thinking going on. There's a few things going on here actually, but literal thinking is the first place to start. So for me, one of the things was ladies wear for ladies, men's wear for men. That means that women can't wear men's clothes and men can't wear women's clothes. You can see why this is problematic, right? Obviously, highly problematic. It's illogical for a start. They're just clothes. Like this whole concept of men and women. Yes, okay, there are lots of different kinds of bodies, but that's the thing, like, there are dudes with booties. I don't have that much of a booty. I don't really have much in the way of hips. And so when I put on ladies' trousers a lot of the time, I look like I have those old-fashioned jobbers on because there's like a hip space where I don't have any hips. But it never crossed my mind to wander over to the men's department and see if their trousers fit better. That's now bothering me. And even just the idea, literally just thinking I could go to the men's department and try on some trousers. My whole brain was like, no. Even now, I can hear internally, my brain is like, no, that's the men's wear. You can't wear the men's wear. You've got the women's wear. That's what you should be wearing. You can't just walk and try on men's trousers. Those are for men. Also, when we have this men's wear, women's wear, it demonstrates that there is zero influence of the queer culture on these shops. These boundaries in the queer culture have always been fluid. And I think that's delightful. And also I think it's really important for us at this period in time to start stretching and practicing in our brains, to start taking these things out of boxes and giving them a good look and realizing that actually this is very personal. Once we start looking, I think we'll find that for everybody it's very personal. We've just been led to believe that it's not. We've been led to believe that women should like to wear flowery pink things and men should like to wear suits and ties. And the first girl that I saw in a suit and tie, I thought was the coolest looking person I'd ever seen. And at the time, I didn't think, I wish I could wear that. I thought, I can work here because they are happy to employ someone like her. So to me, it gave me a feeling that this was a more open-minded place to work. I was going for an interview because she was working there dressed like that. And I thought that was super cool. As it turns out, one person is not a marker. So my mom and my auntie have given me presents over the years. Bags, clothes. And there was always just something not quite right there. But I didn't know what that was. I couldn't relate to that. I couldn't say, oh, that's what I'm feeling. When I compare what I buy with what they buy for me, the core difference is they always buy femininity. They tend to buy me things with flowers. The other day I was shopping for hats. I have a hat, a sun hat. I should be wearing it now. And my mum had bought a hat a few days before, and my mum's choice was this linen type hat with loads of flowers on it. Lots and lots of flowers on it. And when I went looking for hats, all of these women shaped hats with the big wide brims, I never liked any of those hats. I want the cowboy hats. The hats that I do have all have this very sort of masculine energy to them. The other day in the car, my mum was talking about my auntie's just recently bought a car. And one of the challenges she's facing is that she couldn't get a lady's car. And I was like, the heck is a lady's car? Cars are cars, aren't they? There are ladies' cars. What is a lady's car? I don't know what a lady's car looks like. It's a mystery to me. But the fact that this was defined, that in both of their heads there was a thing called a lady's car, was like, a couple of months ago, I got myself a more queer haircut. It was an undercut. That's all it was. It was just an undercut. And the joy, this haircut was like, oh, I like it. I like it so much. I've had a lot of haircuts. And I finally understood what trans folks mean when they talk about dysphoria and euphoria about their bodies after they get a top or binder or surgery or something, the euphoria that they feel. And I had never really had an experience where I could relate to that. Definitely the dysmorphia part I could absolutely relate to, but the euphoria part, there really wasn't anything. And this haircut was it. It was the first, not this haircut, it was the first time that I had a haircut that I was like, that's pretty good. I've understood dysphoria for a long time because to an extent I have it, and also there is like an unhappiness about my body that's existed for a really long time, but I haven't really ever experienced the euphoria part of it. And when I got this haircut, I mean, it wasn't a big thing, it was a really small thing, but getting this undercut felt like some kind of freedom. Just having a queer haircut felt so delightful and like an inch closer to who I might be. It wasn't about the haircut. This isn't the haircut. We had a miscommunication. It was a whole lot of drama. She basically undid the entire haircut. We're very sad. Very, very sad about this. It's going to take me a couple of months to grow it back out again. This is the haircut that the hairdresser who thinks that you should look like a woman gives you. She's very, very feminine. Oh my goodness, her eyelashes this last time. Damn, girl. It must be like her eyelids doing like pull-ups or something. It's amazing. Anyway, that's a totally different story. This is not the haircut. We're not impressed. We're back to square one. But I had a haircut that I really, really liked for the first time in a really, really long time. And the main point about it was that it was more queer and more masculine. Think about the things that you like that have been deemed inappropriate by others. Too childish, too bright, too girly, too manly, too drab, too boxy, too curvy, too pink, too short, too long, too tight, too revealing, too sexy, too young, too old. How many of these are based on a white, heterosexual, cisgender, able-bodied, often Western, capitalist perspective? If you're watching this, it might be time to do some deprogramming. Try lurking in the corners of TikTok you're curious about, but you don't think are for you. That's part of the challenge for me in the beginning. I think it's probably due to my masking. I have this feeling like I should be a good girl, and I don't fit in those places. In my head, they weren't for me. And I think what this research has done is allowed me to realize that it's not that simple, but also who decides what is for you and not for you. Historically, for me, that has been my mother and society at large. You are a woman, and therefore you should have these things, you should wear these things, you should enjoy these things. And I think once you start doing this research, you start to realize that actually a lot of that is constructed. A lot of that is encouragement to conform and a dissuasion to try and go outside the box and do things differently. And I think if you look around the neurodiverse community, you will find that, first of all, there's a lot of queer folks in the neurodiverse community, but also, especially if you see people who have been neurodiverse diagnosed from a younger age, a lot of them allowing themselves more to just be themselves. And I think those of us who were late diagnosed and especially heavy masking people, we don't know who we are for a start, and we don't allow ourselves to lean into those things because it's all of those two things that I talked about earlier. So I think in this process, post-diagnosis or post-self-diagnosis, where you're trying to figure out who you are, a lot of that is about your own investigations into whatever piques your curiosity. Follow the curiosity. That is the key thing to do, I think. Follow the curiosity. It will take you to different places. And when you're looking at stuff, first of all, remember, nobody needs to know where you're looking at. It's for you. And secondly, look at it and ask yourself, is this about what I want for me, or is this about what I want from a relationship, sexuality kind of perspective? Do I want this in somebody else, or I do want this for myself? And that was a really difficult one for me to get my head around. This idea of masculinity. I am a woman. I have no question about that. But there are lots of things about that that don't fit. And so I think being able to say, no, actually, I do prefer to wear this kind of clothes. I think that this is cool and I would like to wear it, as opposed to saying, she looks cool wearing that, and never feeling like I was allowed to be that for myself. She looks cool, but I could never wear that. She looks cool, but I could never do that. There's a lot of that kind of thinking going on. So a lot of it is, how do we get rid of that and start saying, she looks cool, I'd like to try on a pair of jeans like that. Or she looks cool, that haircut looks amazing, I wonder if I could wear that haircut. This hasn't really gone into a lot of detail about what I'm actually talking about. We talked before about compulsory heterosexuality. And I think one of the kind of side effects that we're unaware of with compulsory heterosexuality is how much it frames what is acceptable and unacceptable in our lives. The reason I'm distancing this from gender and sexuality is because I think in our Western world, we have bound too much up in gender and sexuality. I think there is definitely importance and relevance in having those labels and understanding and feeling like, oh, I fit there, or I fit here, or this is me, or this isn't me, simply to understand the variety that exists in the world. And I think with the compulsory heterosexuality, we really don't understand the variety that exists for people in the world on the gender and sexuality spectrums. And especially with gender, we are so focused on male, female, that we really don't conceive of the variety that's available. And I think we're only just starting to understand it. As the trans debate has continued, slowly the intersex community is starting to be heard. And in the process of the intersex community starting to be heard, people are starting to realize that this isn't simple, actually, that there is a whole group of people out here who have been marginalized, who have been erased from birth. And that doesn't mean they didn't exist. And their very existence completely undermines the trans debate. Because if intersex people exist, then trans people must exist. And if intersex people exist, then this whole male-female binary is farcical. It makes no sense at all. And if the male-female binary is a farce and makes no sense at all, then what the fuck are we all talking about? And so then when we put it into that frame and we take away that compulsory heterosexuality, we start to think about, who are the clothes for? Because when you look at a lot of women's fashion, even if it's for older women, a lot of that women's fashion is not made for women to be comfortable. It's not made for women to feel confident, to feel like boss, to feel inspired. It's not even really made to make them feel sexy, because in that sexiness is an expected discomfort. Sometimes you can be sexy when you feel uncomfortable, but for the most part, you need to feel comfortable to feel sexy. So really, how much of our women's clothes are made with women in mind? Not much, really. And comparatively, when we look at men, of course, we can say, okay, men have to wear suits. They're uncomfortable in summer. It's straight up, not very nice. They have to wear tie, choking, a whole bunch of things that we can say. But their discomfort is not high on the list of what's happening. When you start to look at it like that, you start to question, who are these clothes for? And I think as well, part of the challenge is that we associate certain things with certain groups of people, and we think if I'm not in that group of people, then I can't do those things. So like, for example, we associate masked lesbians or butch lesbians with lesbianism. But what if there are a whole bunch of women out there who are not lesbians, but would prefer to dress mask or butch, and they would be more comfortable and it would suit who they are and it would bring out their personality better, but they're wearing frilly dresses because they feel like they're not allowed to do that. That then means that we have this misrepresentation of what women look like. I think we can agree it's kind of where we're at right now. So I think this perception that your sexuality and your gender must align is not real. I think that we have a much wider variety of what's possible, and we often only see it in the queer community. I think that generally probably a lot of humans are a lot more queer than they would like to make on, but I think certainly the neurodiverse community is a lot more queer than anybody's ready for us being. And I think it's probably good for us to lean into that, because there is a freedom within the queer community that it doesn't exist in the hetero community, because the queer community is already not conforming in whichever way they are queer. They're already not conforming, so then that gives them the freedom to be more non-conforming in other things that they do. And I think for us as neurodiverse people, we can't conform actually. And more I feel like it's not actually good for us to conform, because society is freaking out about people not conforming in the assumption that we are the minority. And I don't think we are. I think these days, and probably always, but these days it's much more obvious that more and more people don't fit into these patriarchal society standards and expectations. And forcing them to fit in is not a suitable answer. So if we can get a bit more brave and lean into these things once we realize them, then I think that's probably really good for everybody. And I think also we have to be allowed to change our minds and allowed to try stuff out and do stuff and think, oh, this week I want to do this and next week I want to do that. It's weird, unpicking this whole thing, like, who are you? There are so many people in the world who don't have to question who they are. And to be 43 and not sure what you want to wear or how you want your haircut, I can see why that's confusing for people. But at the same time, it's a really important journey. And I really think that more people need to have these kind of journeys, especially at this point where we are right now. It's really important that people are healing. And part of the healing process is letting go of all of these capitalist, Western, Christian, compulsory heterosexuality sorts of ideas, because that's not who humans are. We are complex beings. And the idea that just because you're a woman, you should dress a certain way, when you look at it, it's kind of dumb. It doesn't make sense. And why wouldn't you want more flexibility and freedom? I get that it's really scary for some people, but I also think that a lot of times the reason it's really scary for people is because they want it and they think they're not allowed to have it. For me, going into the menswear department is super scary. And one of the reasons it's scary is because I want it and I don't think I'm allowed to have it. Partly I don't think I deserve it, and partly I don't think that it's allowed for a girl like me to go into the menswear department. Why do we have menswear, women's wear department? Clothes, they're all clothes. They should be like body shape. People with big butts come in male and female forms, so why? And especially with us being autistic people, ADHD people, we follow rules and we want to fit in, we don't want to be left out. Due to our literal thinking and masking tendencies, many neurodiverse folks adhere even more strongly to societal norms than neurotypical people do. We follow the rules without realizing that they're more like guidelines, suggestions, really. Sometimes I would look at other people and go, that looks cool, but I could never. And I think this is a really important thing that we need to think about from an autistic perspective, that but I could never, like, where is that coming from? Because I think for me, it came from this need to conform, to be a good girl, to fit in, maintaining the mask. And then someone says, yeah, I buy from the menswear department. And my autistic brain goes, but that's menswear. You can't buy from the menswear department. You're a woman. You can't buy from a menswear department. No, you can't do that. And I can see my mother's face, my auntie's face. If I were to walk into the menswear department and look around and pick some things out to try, I can see they're like, what are you doing over there? What are you doing? There's nothing for you over there, you know? And that is a product of their generation. How do you explain? This is not about being a man. This has nothing to do with becoming a man. You can be inspired by something without wanting to be it. Doing my gender research, that wasn't really a complicated part of the research. There wasn't a worry about was I a girl or was I a boy. That's never something I've battled with. And I think perhaps that's part of the challenge with this feeling that I'm a girl and therefore I should wear girly things and do girly things. And I would have trouble with this because I don't do girly things actually most of the time. So leaning into this more is very happiness making, which is good, but it also comes with a lot of challenges because of the world in which we live. For you, could you put this in some of your own research instead of having the thought and then shutting it down and saying, yes, but I'm a woman. I couldn't possibly, even if it's just your imagination, lean into it a little bit more and be like, okay, but what if I did? And how would I feel if I did? And the reality is sometimes you're going to find that these things are not a good fit. It's not going to work. It's not right for you. I think one of the challenges I'm going to face is the fact that I'm quite short and chubby. And as such, I'm never going to look like some of the very, very cool mask girls that I can see on TikTok. But I can do more to feel more like myself. And feeling more like myself then gives me more space to be happier and healthier as myself. Start keeping your eyes open for things you really, really like. You know, Marie Kondo's sparks joy. And don't be swayed by the "it's not for you" voice that appears in your head. If you like it, ask why. And as I said, one question that I had to ask is, do I like them, like that person, or do I want to be like them? That can help you clarify what could be very confusing territory. Maybe it's both, or maybe not. Starting to think differently about my body and thinking about it as not for men, and therefore it can look however I want it to look, has given me a lot more confidence and less anxiety and a lot more curiosity to explore more and to find more of what I like. I am anxious because I already know that this is something that my family members will find hard to accept. But the joy of feeling like I could dress like the people that I think look very cool is kind of exciting. So let me know in the comments if you have had any realizations like this, and what have you come to accept or enjoy about yourself or lean into in the process of post-diagnosis or post-self-diagnosis. I hope that was useful. See you next time. Bye.